Bottle With, the podcast about wine, people, and their stories. Already a subscriber? Subscribe A Bottle With now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Cheers, ladies and gentlemen. Today, a new episode of A Bottle With. Today, another English one, and I'm very excited. I'm sitting here in Düsseldorf in my home base, and my dear guest is sitting in London in the UK. And first, a very warm welcome, Gareth Birchley.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. Nice to have you here. So usually, Gareth, I would ask you to present yourself, to introduce yourself, but I would like to have a short story on how we met, and it was like, I think 3 years ago. We met at Ernie's. It's at Dr. Lozen at the Mosel, a very famous winery, and I think very good friend of yours. And there was the yearly auction of Rieslings, and after this auction we met at Ernie's place, and it was like a dinner, and it's like 20 guys from all over the world, Russia, Ukraine, UK of course, and so on, and everyone brought a bottle or two, blind. And then there was this guy, which is like really young, stepping in with a Kingsman jacket. You know, maybe guys, you know the movie of Kingsman. This fancy jacket, also some fancy slippers. And I said, okay, this guy is one special one. And then dinner starts, and we had the first wines blind. And then this guy sitting next to me, or on the other side of the table, and he was like going through the wines and like, okay, old world, okay, that's Italy, Tuscany, vintage is like 1990. This could be this, but to me it's more this one. Also with Burgundy, with US wines, and it was totally crazy. I was totally stunned by this guy, because you need to know, if you have such a great experience of your taste, then you need to have these bottles drunken more than one time, more than 5 times, maybe 10 or 20 times. And so this guy had a really, really big memory for taste in the wines he had. And so I said, okay, wow. And today we have him here. So another one, welcome, Gareth. So first, who are you? What are you doing? And what are you drinking right now?
So sitting here in London, boiling hot day. So I am involved in the fine wine trade in London. I'm the buying director at a company called Burns & German, where we specifically deal with private clients and sort of the high-end wines. And today I thought it would be good to open a bottle of Ernie here with you, given that was sort of where we met. And it's a new wine which basically hasn't been released yet, which is his Garden Spätleser tradition. So it's kind of it's 2011, and it's the kind of style of wine that's going back to how they made wine 200 years ago, sort of reducing the residual sugar levels in these kind of Mosel Rieslings.
Wow, okay, that sounds nice. I didn't try it yet, but Gareth is always, you need to know, when you see him on Instagram, he's always drinking Ernie's. It's really nice to see that, really like big lineups, and always there's some Dr. Lozen in it. So nice to hear. I need to get a bottle. And yes, so you're in the fine wine industry, and that's what you always already told me when we met and we first talked. What's this thing with the Kingsman jacket first? It's
yeah. So at the time I was the buyer for the fine wine buyer at Berry Brothers and Rudd, famous wine merchant in London. Probably, maybe, I don't know if it's the oldest wine merchant in the world. Maybe they're older in Germany, but it's certainly the oldest family-owned company of any kind in the UK since 1698. And a lot of the second Kingsman film was set around Berry Brothers and in the shop. And they sold a lot of the merchandise in the shop, and I loved the orange velvet dinner jacket. And but they only made a very small number of them, so I basically just had one made in Hong Kong, and sort of, went from there, really.
That's nice. You need to see this, guys. It's really, really fancy, but also very classy looking, and really matches this British accent, which I really love, and always great to talk to you, because I really like it. So, but already at Burns at Berry Brothers. No, not at Burns. So we are already at Berry Brothers, but let's start from the beginning. So you're, as I said, you had a lot of wines on your palate. How old are you?
35.
So like 5 years older than me, and that's crazy. So you need to be in the industry since a couple of years, I guess. And but let's go back to how it started. When was the first experience with wine for you?
I mean, my dad was always sort of into wine when I was a kid. I remember the first wine at probably the age of, I don't know, 10 or so, like actually like thinking about wine and thinking about the flavors of wine was a bottle of Cloudy Bay. And that always sort of still sticks with me. And you know, I still buy that wine now. And I love it. And I love aging the Sauvignon Blancs and trying them. I just finished off a case of 1999 recently, which was still just drinking absolutely amazingly well. I mean, absolutely beautiful. And I guess then sort of I was always relatively interested. And then I went to the University of Bath and I was reading engineering, and I joined the Wine Society, but it conflicted with the rugby club.
Okay.
And before then, sort of rugby was my absolute life. And one day I was sick and I just couldn't go and play rugby. So I went to the Wine Society for the first time. Uh-huh. And then after that, I never went back to rugby. I didn't play another game because it was just, I just completely and utterly fell in love with wine.
It could be worse.
And that was it, really. And off we went.
So just let me jump in, because you already told us about, or you just told us about the Cloudy Bay from '99, and I saw this the post or the story on Instagram, I think a couple of weeks or 2 months ago, and I was curious because Cloudy Bay, Gareth Birchley, does not work in my in my mindset first.
Yeah.
But if I have the story now, it works. But so funny, I saw the post or the story, and we have this kind of Facebook groups in Germany, and there was kind of a topic of Sauvignon Blanc and also about Cloudy Bay and blah, 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 blah. And I told them that there's a guy which is really, really into the wine business and have a really good palate and knowledge, and that he really loved the 99 or in general, the aged Cloudy Bays. And there's like a shitstorm, which is said that, yeah, this is totally crap. Impossible, not good, overpriced, bam. So really the whole thing, you know what it is. And
interesting.
So what can you say to these guys?
I think that's quite interesting. I think, first of all, you know, I'd break down, you know, I'm fortunate that I drink a lot of great wines, and I'm kind of, I'm not so apologetic for that. You know, I think it's really important. I think that there are people out there who are, you know, championing the market for £5 wines, £10 wines, £15 wines, this kind of thing. To me, like, I want to understand, you know, what are the boundaries of wine? You know, when you look at something and someone says, right, the drinking dates are, you know, for this wine, you know, on Parker or whatever, 2020 to 2025. It's like, well, what does it taste like actually when the wine is, you know, 10 years older than that? And I think then you start to understand how wine works. And I think, first of all, with Cloudy Bay, you've probably got to look a little bit at the production methods in the very early days. So I went to the 30th birthday of Cloudy Bay 5 years ago, and they served it.
You were at the winery?
No, in London. They did a dinner, and they served the first. They didn't serve the first vintage, which is 2000. Which was 1985. But they did serve a load of wines from 1987 onwards, and the 87 was still fresh. You know, in those days they made it with Semillon as well. I think. They moved to cork in, I think 2004 was the first vintage under screw cap. So moved from cork, sorry. I think they made the wine in a very different way back then. That's not to say that it's not as age-worthy now, but it's, you know, for me, it's about understanding it's very easy to make assumptions about wine and say this doesn't age well, or this does age well, or whatever. You know, you've really got to have a good understanding of the trajectory of how wine evolves. You've got to have great experience in tasting those kind of things. You know, what do these old Sauvignon Blancs taste like? Last week I opened an 88 Sancerre, and I had a Cotat Grand Cote 89 recently. And, you know, now we're talking about 30, coming on to 30, you know, odd year old Sauvignon Blanc. And I think you know, that's one thing that I don't particularly like in the world of wine is, you know, if someone says to me,
dogmatic thing.
If someone says to me, hey, look, you know, I drank 20 old bottles of Cloudy Bay and I found them very variable, and I don't particularly like the flavor profile, but, you know, to stand up and to say, oh, it's impossible for a wine like that to be age worthy without any experience is, to me, a serious problem, in that people aren't open to trying, or, you know, they write things off without really having any experience.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's so nice to hear from you, because that's also a thing, because this dogmatic thing, you can't drink it older than than the pros say, or you don't have to drink this because it's mainstream or whatever. I have a lot of friends drinking. They love to drink Cloudy Bay, and they still buy it since a couple of years. But they also usually they drink Riesling, Grand Cru, and some H Bordeaux and Burgundy and stuff. But said, okay, sometimes Cloudy Bay is the right wine for friends, or to share with friends, or for whatever, on the terrace, barbecue, whatever. And I think what's the problem with this? Just saying, okay, I'm excited for a bottle of Cloudy Bay, so just open it and don't have this kind of, you can't do this, you're not allowed to do this because it's like mainstream or it's not good, and I mean, wine is definitely not about rules, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's not about, you know, you do this. You know, for me, so much of wine is about facilitating pleasure, and it's about facilitating hedonism, and it's not about getting necessarily always bogged down in the detail. You know, I love to go to a vertical tasting and taste, you know, 50 vintages of XYZ wine or whatever, but it's not always about that. Like, sometimes there's just times to not talk about wine. You know, there's times to open bottles and just exactly, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So after you found out for yourself that rugby is not the thing, and wine is the thing, you got into the wine thing. So you started, I think. Well, so I ran the Bath University Wine Society for a couple of years, and I made some good contacts. You know, we had Michael. What age was it? This was 2005, so I would have been, or 2004, so I would have been 19. Okay. So I met sort of Jancis Robinson, and we had Michael Broadbent came to do a tasting for us, and Serena Sutcliffe came with David Peppercorn, and so we, you know, I made some pretty big contacts, and and you know, I looked around the market, and that was in the days when Neil Martin was just starting out writing his blog for Wine Journal, and he came to do a tasting for us, and he was quite heavily involved with Bordeaux Index, and he said, look, you know, go and talk to Gary Boom, the guy who owns the company, and so I went along, and I sort of started chatting with him, and the first thing he said to me, he said, well, you know, all those wines that everyone else talks about, well, they're the ones that we drink. And he said, if you want to drink the world's greatest wines, then like, this is the place to be. So, and true to his word, you know, he was right. And so I started there in sort of private client sales before I moved to buying a few years later. So that's so incredible to hear, like, these names, Jancis Robinson, Neil Martin, in this young age. And it's, to me, it's also special to talk to Olivier Krug and on all these winemakers and also these companies. But in this young age, and it's so impressive that a young guy, just curious and passionate for wine, of course, always a bit luck with it and the timing, of course, but it's not just in this case, it's always the thing. Gareth is so like a library, walking through and just telling about wines he had and all the vintages and the differences in vintages and also the crus and the parcels, and that's so exciting, and that's why this guy just is in my mind as one of the like top 3 4 guys knowing about wine, and all of the others are really like 20 30 years older, and that's so always keeps me stunned. So okay, Bordeaux Index, what happened then?
And that's sort of all of those sort of contacts helped a lot. And I think that, one thing that I started to realize is that as a general rule, people are in this industry because they love it. And actually, these sort of big names, the Jancis Robinsons and the Michael Broadbents, actually, they're more into sort of helping young people, but not enough people just ask, right? And so it's kind of like, if you just email and say, hey, Jancis, you don't know me, but XYZ, if someone does that to me and is like, hey, I need, some advice or some help, I would always go out of my way to help someone who's passionate about wine. And I think, then going through Bordeaux Index and sort of got into the buying side, and it was at a time sort of pre the 2008 recession, where kind of it was just blue sky numbers. The prices of these wines were going up, daily. And also it was at a time when wine just didn't cost as much. If you think about, a 20-year-old first growth, really at that sort of time you were paying like £100 a bottle. So, and it very quickly became a lot more than that, within, but around that sort of time, 06, 07, 06, I started in Bordeaux Index, 06, 07, 08, and we used to drink, 85 Lafite, and it was like £120. And, 5 years later, it was 500-600 quid. And so I think people who just missed out on that period of time, missed out on a lot of really inexpensive wine, and experience in tasting. I think you get yourself, you make your own sort of way in these things, and you find a way to get yourself in a position to drink those kind of wines, and at the table with the right people who are opening those wines, and you've got to be able to bring something to the table. And I was very fortunate that I fell in with a group of guys. I fell in with a group of guys in the trade who were 6 or 7 years older than me, who, they knew that I wasn't able to pitch at the same level as them. But I was sort of always welcome at the table. And,
they were able to buy these wines.
Yeah, they were able to buy those wines. And maybe I was turning up with a 30 quid bottle of wine, and they were all turning up with a 150 quid bottle of wine, but they kind of didn't care. And so I will sort of,
that's great,
always be grateful for that, because I had, a seat at the table when I really probably, all things being equal, probably shouldn't have done. And that sort of helped sort of mold a lot of my experience.
Yeah, that's a key. If you have these kind of guys, I'm very happy. Also, I have a couple of guys around me which share bottles with me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have drink a kind of Claude Menil 2002 drink Corona right now, or all this kind of stuff. A lot of bottles, because I'm just not able. I just started my business 3 years ago professionally, and not possible to buy a bottle of. I have some guys. I know some guys which say, okay, join the table, but bring a Aubryon 82. Or bring a Margaux of 83, and it's just like, sorry, but and these guys bought them like in the 90s.
30 years ago, and it cost nothing.
But it's two sides.
I get it. I spend a lot of time now, and partly it's an emotional thing for me. The guy, one of the guys who was in that group very sadly died, and we'll talk later about that, where I joined the business with his old business partner. But I spend a lot of time with the younger people in the trade who are really sort of passionate. I try and do the same and open the bottles that they can't. So if we all go for dinner and they're just going to go to a shop and spend 20 quid just to bring a bottle, it's like, you know, I have a ton of wine. Like, let's just open some bottles. You don't need to stress out about paying the price. Like, a lot of the time I didn't pay big money for it. You know, you buy these things at auction, or you buy these fun things, and they need to be drunk, right? So it's not like we're sitting at home drinking one bottle by one bottle. You know, sometimes it's the time to open 10 bottles or whatever, and actually, like, it's kind of why we do it. It's what we're, you know, yeah.
That's what Aubert de Villaine said. Wine is to share, wine is to enjoy.
Of course.
In the Somme documentary. Yes. So and then BBR coming up.
So then after a long time, you know, Bordeaux Index was really like a sort of a family to me, and it was a very difficult place to leave. And, you know, I'd never had another job, and you know, fine wine buying jobs at Berry Brothers don't come up very often. You know, they don't really exist. Just because, you know, you think really, like, a company like that, they have 2 or 3 fine wine buyers, you know, and it's like, so, you know, and if each of them stay there 10 years, it's like, you know, you're going to get, you know,
it's tough to get.
Yeah, and it's very difficult.
More than
and an opportunity came up as the fine wine buyer for the Asia market.
Okay.
And I knew nothing about Asia. So I was approached for the job, and so I sort of started with a thought process of saying, look, I'll start with Asia, and then once I'm in, then I'll work out where I'm going to go from there within the company. And that's kind of how it worked out. Yeah.
Wow. But Berry Brothers and Rudd, that's what you told us about with the Kingsman movie, that it's on this corner at which street is it?
It's the bottom of St. James's Street, opposite St. James's Palace. So, and it's still in the same site since 1698.
Yes,
and I mean, there's an amazing amount of history there. You know, there's the telegram on the wall from White Star Lines, basically saying, "Dear Mr. Berry, all of the wine that you had aboard the HMS Titanic, for want of a better phrase, is now at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean." And, you know, you think when that happened, the company was already over 200 years old. So,
yeah, it's I think it was 2018 in December.
That's right.
I visited you with Tina, and you showed us the holy rooms of Berry Brothers and Rudd.
That's right.
And it was like this Titanic telegraph. It was like, wow, this is 100% history. It's you can't copy this as a company, and for history of a company. And also you showed us the different rooms, and this really, how to say, these small rooms on different areas, different levels, and it was like a labyrinth kind of. And also these old bottles, some of the
oldest glass, I think, from like you know, early 1600s or, you know, late 1500s and things like that.
Kind of the first bottles ever produced, yes. And it's all in this building, and it's like, wow.
It's a pretty special place, yeah.
I was super impressed by this place. I was really impressed by the whole wine business and wine scene of London. Of course, I think it's the wine capital of the world. But these different places, yes.
It's such a great place to be involved in wine, because you have so many different markets. You know, Bordeaux is great, but, like, you know, you struggle to find Burgundy in Bordeaux, and you know, even some of the proprietors, you know, they don't drink these wines. And there are so many great wineries out there where actually, you know, the owners, they almost don't even, you know, Ernie obviously springs to mind, where he opens wines from all around the world. But a lot of these guys, you know, to put it bluntly, they're not wine lovers in the same way. And London is just, you know, has such a cosmopolitan wine scene, and there's everything you could want. You know, there's all wines from around the world. You know.
Yeah. Also, at first the BBR, the new store also around the corner is really beautiful, and also hedonism, of course, is like crazy time. First time I went there, and
Yeah,
it's not just the humidor with the Romane Conti and all this stuff, but the whole setup, how it's arranged, this atmosphere, this how you can see how much passion there is to
yeah.
to present wine,
It's
to
a
love.
pretty nuts place, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And
And so they have now they have
Restaurant.
a restaurant, right,
Restaurant,
where
right?
you
Yeah.
can then order any of the bottles from the shop, and you just pay a small corkage fee.
You've been there, right?
I haven't actually.
Really?
I've been meaning to go
After Corona, maybe.
I've been meaning to go for a long time, but I just haven't sort of got around to it.
Okay. But well, and then you already told us it was this kind of really sad story about an old friend of yours.
Yeah, I mean, so
Yeah.
it was 2 years ago now. So summer of 2018, my great friend Ed Burns, who was sort of the biggest character, the most lovable, and everyone just adored this guy, and he had the amazing wine knowledge, and he was just always at the heart of everything that we were in the fine wine market in London. And very sadly, at the age of 40, he got a very short cancer, and he passed away in the summer. And I knew his business partner reasonably well. We've been sort of friends, but for less time, maybe 5 years or so. And it was just the two of them, and they started the company together. And I spent a lot of time talking to peers about what's the future of the company. And he was kind of at the time running the thing on his own, and not necessarily despondent, but he was a little bit, he was concerned. And he just said, I've lost my business partner, I've lost one of my best friends, and like, where do we go? And do I just go and hire someone from a company who's sort of going to come and work with me? And basically I said to him, well, look, let's just do it together. I said, let me come. I'll bring a very different skill set to the sort of things that you and Ed have been doing in the past, and sort of joined as a partner of the business. So we have a lady who works with us part-time, but then it's she also came from Berry Brothers. She ran the wine school there for 10 years or more.
Down in the cellar, right?
Not the wine school, school, the wine club, which is the sort of the delivery, the case delivery, the case delivery service. So
the company is Burns in German, right?
Burns in German, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So Ed Burns and Piers German. So we're sort of a year and a half down the line, and things are going well, and we're sort of building it. But it's and it's a great project, and I love it. It's we have a good time, and we sort of retain the essence of sort of what Ed and Piers started, but also we're sort of a slightly different outfit now, obviously. And we're obviously trying to grow the business and go from there. But it's going well.
I thought it's much bigger than just this.
No, it's just us. So we do. The thing is, we basically buy and sell. We buy and sell, the best wines in the world.
Yeah.
And we're very fortunate that we have some clients who have, private clients who have collections of up to £50 million or so. So actually the most difficult thing is always sort of sourcing wine.
Yeah.
It's relatively easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's relatively easy to find buyers for these things. But what's difficult is finding these wines with the perfect provenance.
Authentic,
and
yes.
all of that, and where it's been. And fortunate that we have more than a handful of guys who have got these kind of sellers who also they seem to want to help us out. And so when we go to them and say, hey, look, maybe you've got 2 cases of this, is there any chance that we could buy a case from you and sell? And then we have some sort of some high-end customers, and it works. It works pretty well.
If you're like just this small kind of company, but how many bottles are you moving in a year, like roundabout? Can you say this, or just to have a
bottles.
Yeah. Or cases, whatever.
Good question. I don't know. I mean, put it this way. I mean, our order values are pretty high. Our average order size is around £6,000 or £7,000 an order.
Really?
So yeah. So I mean,
wow.
So you imagine. So that's sort of from selling, you know, things like Whispering Angel all the way to sort of DRC or something like that. You know, so we're pretty specific. We're also, because we're light on staffing. We try not to. We're not in the business really. I know it sounds sort of disingenuous. It's not meant to, but we're not in the business of pleasing everyone. You know, we have relatively low overheads. We have a really nice little office in Chelsea that's part of an old arts club, and then that's it. So we pay, you know, our bonding and 3 salaries and our office. So it's meant during Corona that we're sort of we're pretty nimble. We've been able to trade, you know, and a lot of companies are making huge numbers of redundancies and you know, trimming the staff. And you know, it's a very difficult time for people, particularly in the restaurant sector, you know, especially wine merchants who are selling to restaurants. We don't sell to any restaurants really.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Also good. Yeah.
So we've been very fortunate. Yeah.
Okay, so to finish your CV, looking back, which was the let's say most impressive bottle you've ever sold? Can you
ever sold
or ever moved from which
Ooh,
is
I tell you
or the craziest story maybe, if not one bottle, if it's maybe a story.
Wow, I mean, I tell you, I sold in the very, very early days before, you know, I mean, before I'd really sort of sold much of these kind of things. I sold an Imperial of Le Pan 1990. 1990 Le Pan Imperial, you know, and they only made 6. They only made 6, I think. And it was like one of these, it came with the letter from the estate and, you know, all of these kind of things. I think, you know, we're regularly selling, I don't know, I love selling rare wines and I love selling things to people who are going to drink them. I mean, we sell a lot of Romani Conti.
Okay.
You know, up to, you know, we maybe sell a 6-pack we sold recently a 6-pack of 2002 for £150,000
crazy
without taxes. And you know,
but it's
things
fun, right?
Things like that, you know. I mean, that's a really nice sale, right? And that sort of that pays the bills. But you know, it's great to sell sort of really cool, interesting niche things, you know, like I'm a huge Northern Rhone fan, and one of my favorite producers is this guy Benetier, and it's like the wines are so hard to get hold of, and I managed to find a parcel of some old vintages of Benetier, and I was just so pleased with myself, you know, because we can buy and we can sell Romani Conti and Attache, these kind of wines. You know, they're fairly available, and you have to be very, very careful with the provenance and all of this kind of thing. But to find these Benetier, particularly their Dolium cuvee, was just so exciting. And if I can say, you know, if you ever get the opportunity to try those wines, they're just incredible.
So you're really hunting for some of the wines.
Yeah.
Is for you or for the clients, all right?
Well,
sounds
both,
like so much. Yeah, sounds like so much fun. Wow. So, okay. So let's go into the fun section. I'm following you, of course, and I'm like answering or responding to your stories like 5 times a day. And in the prime time of Corona, the lockdown stuff, I must say, okay, it seems like you have a pipeline for turbot.
And, yeah, exactly. It's funny. We actually cooked one last night as well.
Yes, I saw this too. Yeah, back in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, I love turbot, but you cooked a lot. You do this kind of gueuleton style, placing the lobsters on the it was like on the platter with the wine, and was like really, really. Yes, got me really hungry over the weeks. And what was your favorite pairing? What was your favorite wine? What was your favorite experience in the last month?
You know, I think it was a really strange time, right? And I think we sort of we went down to Somerset, and we spent it in the middle of the mall down there, and there wasn't, you know, we were out of London, so it wasn't like we were just all the time, you know, pining for these restaurants, because there aren't any restaurants around. So the only thing to do was to try and source the best produce and to cook. And so that's what we did. We got hooked up with a great meat supplier and with a great fish supplier, and then I just literally cooked and cooked and cooked and cooked and cooked. And I mean,
yes, you got these deliveries on a daily basis.
Really exactly.
Like, okay, we got new beef here, we got new lobsters, we have new wine. Let me check what we have here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had some of the there's a butcher down in Cornwall called Philip Warren, and he did something which was really smart. He opened a new section of his website called On the Pass, and what that did, basically, all of the Michelin-starred restaurants that had already pre-ordered their beef for the whole of the spring, or for their lamb or whatever for the whole of the spring, he then sold it based upon where it was from. So it was like a rib, a 75-day aged rib, which was going to go to Brat, the restaurant in Shoreditch, for example, right? And so, but what you had, so you paid restaurant price, you paid the restaurant wholesale price, but you had to buy the whole thing, right? So it was like, you know, if you buy the rib, it's like 9 kilos, you know? So, but the price per kilo was really great. And the quality of the beef and the quality of all the meat we had from them was just incredible. And then a chef friend down there introduced us to a fish supplier. And every day she goes down to Brixham, just on the south coast of Devon, and she brings the fish and the lobsters and all the lobsters live and everything. And so we had sort of both of those things sorted out. And I think, you know, we didn't really spend more money than if we were in London, sort of eating in restaurants or whatever.
Super expensive. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, we tried some cool things. One of the really great things was a friend of mine. We had a guinea fowl that was supposed to go to the Ledbury. Their great friend Brett, the owner, is one of my great friends, and you know, it was another guy who used to work there had done this dish, and it was basically a guinea fowl, like cooked in a pot with Riesling. So it was you put it in the pot with all the sort of Jerusalem artichokes and whatnot, and then in with a bottle of Riesling. And
which
you then seal the pot.
Ernie's.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
What else?
So then sealed the pot, and then you put it inside. And this is where, you know, the meter that you and I both have, the thermometer, came in really useful, because you could leave it inside and you could monitor the temperature of the cook of the guinea fowl the whole time. But like, that was so great. I mean, turbot cooked on fire is so difficult to beat that. You know, you get a really great turbot and
get it done.
And you cook it on a fire and you spray it. You sort of make a sort of vinaigrette. You can make it how you like, sort of mustardy style or whatever you want. And all you do is you gently spray the turbot while it's on the fire, and that's what sort of caramelizes the skin.
Yes.
And then you get
like
this
golden ripe.
Oh yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Yes. So we had a turbot at Zanzibar. It's on the island of Sylt.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Like 2 months ago, and it's just like it came from the oven, not from the fire, but just like so this meat, it's kingfish.
Yeah, I mean it's so great. Is. And there was this. I don't know if you saw. There was this picture that kind of went a bit crazy of the picture of me showering with the turbot.
Yeah, I commented on it. Yes,
which a lot of people were just a bit like, I think maybe lockdown has just made me go a bit crazy. But I mean, it was pretty logical, because what happened was we had some friends staying, and we had this 3 kilo turbot. You know, it's pretty big fish by this point. So we couldn't leave it outside. So we put the whole box with the ice and stuff in the shower, because I didn't want it to leak on the floor. So we put it in the shower, and then we realized that actually it was too big to like wash it in, like just clean it in the sink. So I just said, it doesn't matter. Like I'll just get in the shower and I'll just clean it in the shower. And then just hand me that magnum of champagne over there, and you know, and then suddenly it
hold my glass.
Yeah, exactly. Broke the internet. Yeah. So there was some logic behind it, but yeah, I think it was mainly just a bit of lockdown craziness.
Yeah, it's okay. And what about the wines? If you think about the wines you had,
I tell you, one of the really standout wines for me, we had this great bottle of Rouleau Merceau Charme 95, and that was we're so often disappointed with white Burgundy nowadays, and actually
we had the same thing this weekend with the Ramonet. Yes.
And it's just like you know, when you get a really great bottle of mature white Burgundy. I'm pretty skeptical about the sort of the prices that some of these more. I mean, I can deal with Costure, but you know, the prices that Arnaud Ont and Rouleau and these things, that the prices that they fetch now, I think are slightly crazy.
Slightly.
But you know, I think wine is worth what someone will pay for it, right? That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. True.
But this wine was just, you know, it was just absolutely stunning. You know, it was so great. Just trying to think, you know, we drank a bit of Italian wine, and you know, we had some old Barolos.
Yes, I saw this.
I'm just having a think now. I mean, a lot of Riesling. You know, we obviously had a few cases sent over from Ernie, a few things like that. Ducru 70, that's a great wine. You know, that's another great example. One of the things that I think is so important is, you know, in Bordeaux, particularly with the older vintages, people lose sight, and they, if you don't have experience with Bordeaux, you can be very conservative, and I think people will often only buy, you know, the big name vintages. You look at something and someone goes, oh, it's 1982. And then they go, well, if it's 1983, then that wine's going to be tired. Yeah. And particularly if you start looking through the 70s, you know, so few people now, they understand or know about the, you know, the Bordeaux of the 70s, because people don't really buy them. But actually, when you know what you're looking for, you can find these things really cheaply. And, you know, 73 is a vintage that I love, like 73 Pomerols. People, you know, and even now you can still pick up some of the big names for really fair prices. And Ducru 70 is, I did a big vertical a couple of years ago, and for my mind, between 61 and 82, it's probably even maybe better than the 82. And then they had the problems with the TCA and stuff in the cellar. So probably between 61 and 96, it's the best wine they made. And it's like cheaper than buying a modern day, you know, it's cheaper than buying Ducru 07 or Ducru 11. But you just got to kind of know the wines a little bit. And I think experimenting with those kind of things, where when you can find them, and the important thing is just finding the wines with the good levels. Yes. You know, don't buy wines with a necessarily, like, you know, yeah, okay, I'm not writing off, you know, mid shoulder bottles, but what I am saying is, if you're going to buy a wine that maybe is probably coming to the end of its life, you know, find a bottle with a really good level, and, you know, go and drink these sort of, you know, Grand Prix Lacoste 73. Okay. You know, that's the kind of wine like nobody cares, right? But you can buy it for 40 or 50 quid if you find it in the right place. And for my money, I love drinking mature wines. I love drinking old wines.
Great to hear, because
And
sorry to distribute, but we had a
sorry?
1970 Magnum of Chateau Margaux some I think 2
Yes.
months ago, and it was like really perfect fill. So of course not into neck, but really really top level, and the bottle was really really stunning. And because everybody's saying before, okay, 70, I think 70 Latour is also really big time.
70 Latour is a great wine,
Yes,
yeah.
and
It's a difficult period for Margaux, that, actually.
but it was really
So,
good.
you know, and that...
we really loved it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was really nice. Great bottle.
And that proves, you know, it's like there are so many rules written around all of this kind of stuff. Don't do this, do
Absolutely.
that. You know, it's like actually the answer is in front of you when you pull the cork, right? And so, yeah, and you know, you hope that the price that you pay corresponds.
Yeah.
You know, 70 Latour is a real legend.
Yes.
You know, Mouton 70, not so great. You know, Margaux 70, but you had a great experience with the Magnum, and that's a really difficult period for Chateau Margaux. And you know, they're obviously wonderful. I mean, in my experience, also like when if in doubt and you're trying to pick something from a year, you know, if you go for like La Mission Aubryon or something, or you know, a lot of the stuff from the Grave is less variable than the stuff from the Medoc, often around that sort of period of time.
Yeah.
And you know, some of these wines last forever. You know, we drank some really great, really old bottles of wine. You know.
Yes.
I
can imagine. Yes. So
yeah,
you're 85 vintage. What is your favorite 85?
Ooh. There are quite a few 85s that have eluded me. So I haven't really drunk many of the DRC 85s.
Come on.
Or I tell you what else I haven't drunk, which I would love to at some point, would be the 85 Lalas. But I mean, in Bordeaux, I've drunk, you know, pretty extensively through 85, and I think it's such a homogenous vintage. You know, everyone raves about 82, and in my mind 82 is a good vintage with a dozen great wines, but 85 is a great vintage across the board. You know, on my birthday this year, I drank 85.
Very high average, yes.
Yeah, I drank 85 Sauciando Mallet, you know, and it's
nice.
It's delicious. It's delicious. But I mean, Cheval Blanc is the best wine of the Cheval Blanc is the wine of the vintage for me, along with Chateau Margaux.
Okay. Mouton is right. It's nice too, I think.
Mouton is great. I mean, Mouton, yeah. Absolutely. Oh, we had a bottle of that just in December. I remember because you got one from the auction, right? That
yes.
I remember you telling
Shining.
me. And actually, you know, the danger sometimes is with those wines is that you don't give them enough credit. Like you think, oh, maybe I decant it for half an hour, and actually, really, it needs like 2 or 3 hours decanting. And we drank the last bottle of 85 Mouton too soon, really. I think you know it could have done with a few more hours in the decanter.
I was really really young too. Yes, I was really youthful. So okay, one last thing.
Yeah,
Corona's over. Hopefully, it's in the near future. What is the place? I'm thinking about one. What is the favorite place, or what's the place you're missing the most right now?
Well, we started going back to restaurants and things.
Yes.
You know, stuff has started opening.
Okay.
I mean, so restaurant-wise, I mean, I'd love to get back to Ernie's. I'm hoping maybe to go for the auction. So we'll have to see. But then now the UK is imposing all these quarantine things where when you come back, you have to stay for 2 weeks at home and stuff. So ideally not. Restaurant-wise, I've been a few times recently to our favourite 67 Pall Mall.
That's what I'm thinking about. Yes,
I know.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
I know. Just waiting for you to come, right? And then we can drink some great bottles there. We had some. I had in the last week. I've been there maybe 2 or 3 times and drunk some nice things.
So just for the guys out there. So 67 Pall Mall is a private members club, which is. I was there the first time in 2017 in December, I think, and I was so nervous before getting there. Gareth told me, "Okay, Björn, come to London. We have one night. We have a private dining room at 67 Pall Mall," and I was like, what it was bring your own. I brought some bottles, 2 bottles from Germany, and
I remember you brought I think you brought, maybe you brought 3. You brought a Marcus Molitor,
yes,
the green cap,
yes, the 100 point. I don't want
and
the
you bought a Romany Saint Vivant 90 from
yes,
someone.
yes, from
Yeah,
yes, 90, my vintage, and also I thought, okay, some Riesling,
there was
because
enough.
I know you like Riesling, and the other one because you love Burgundy. I don't want to disappoint the gang, and so I tried my best. But this, I was really, really crazy nervous when I before getting there. I was like shivering, and yeah, the night was so nice. After this, we went there another time with you, and I can't wait
Yes.
to get another time. This place is so special. Can you just like short?
So they are opening. So basically, private members club, and it was opened by some wine collectors who were tired of paying big markup prices in London restaurants. So basically, they all got together. They wanted to open their own restaurant, and what happens is the site that they looked at, which is of course £67 Mall, which is an old bank. I don't know if people are familiar with Pall Mall in London, but they're nearly all Crown properties, so they're owned by the Queen and they're owned by the state. So that road is famous for private members clubs. So the Travellers Club, the Oxford and Cambridge Club, the Reform Club, which is where Phileas Fogg famously started and ended his 80 days around the world adventure, and these sort of things. So they wanted to open this restaurant, and they said, no, you can't open a restaurant. But they said, well, if you wanted to make it a private members club, we could allow you to do it. So they opened this club, and they've been incredibly ambitious. I think it started off with just one floor with a handful of private dining rooms, and then they opened a second floor. Now they have around 6,000 wines on the list and about 500 wines by the glass.
It's so crazy time.
Everything up to I've been there and drunk 47 Lafite from a Magnum by the glass, that kind of thing. They have those kind of wines on even by the glass. So they're in the process of renovating the rest of the building, and they're going to be opening some more floors there. They're opening beginning of next year, 67 Pall Mall Singapore will be open. And then the plan is that there will be another 5 maybe that will open in the next 10 years.
Wow, really ambitious.
So the idea is to sort of really take it global. And, during lockdown, they've been doing these virtual tastings, which is really incredible. So they do 4 a day, and they send out the samples in these little bottles, and they rebottle it and they sulfur it.
Really?
And they send it out.
Wow.
Like everything you can imagine, Harlan, Latour, but as they've been doing 4 a day. What are we now, since March? What's that? I mean, they must have done 500, 600 of these things at least. And
only the big names.
Well, they've been sort of, doing all sorts. But, that's the thing about the club. It's, until recently, I mean, he just left, but the head sommelier was Greek. So they got a huge list in Greek wine. And the prices are fair. I think the entry level wine on the list at the club is £40.
Yes.
But at any time, they have 200 wines at £40. So, and actually where it's interesting is, the sommeliers are from all over the world. They're
the best of the world, right?
Yeah, and they're top sommeliers. And yeah, from all over the world. And if you actually, rather than you just look through, I mean, for me, right, I just look through Bordeaux, I look through Burgundy, I look through the Rhone, and then I'm kind of bored, right? But if you say to them, hey, look, this is the budget, this is what I want to spend, serve me something blind that's going to blow my mind, and they go away, and that's when they get excited, and a girl is like, I can show this amazing wine from Santorini or whatever, it's a real like centerpiece for wine. There's I went there with a Greek lady once. A couple of stories that have really made me think about this. And I went there with a Greek lady, and she was so excited to meet Terry, the head sommelier. And I was just like, oh yeah, and she was just so amazed at like the Greek wines and all of this kind of thing. And she just went sort of crazy, like fangirling. And I said to her, I was like, what's the deal? And she said, look, I represent on my island. She said, I represent the 30 wine growers that are there. And she said to me, you sit here, in your ivory tower in London, and all you want to drink is Bordeaux and Burgundy. And she said, this guy to us, he is a god. He is here championing the wines. And if he's not doing what he's doing, he's championing these wines on the world stage, because you just sit here and you just want to drink Bordeaux and Burgundy and you don't look at anything else. But there are people out there whose livelihoods, rely on it. And he is the person who is championing Greece and Greek wine for the world. And we owe him our livelihood. And, I just felt so ashamed that, I was the guy that was sort of, and just drinking Bordeaux and Burgundy, and just so embarrassing, when you look at it like that and think, God, there are, you become a little bit detached that there are real people out there making real wine. And 67 is designed to showcase all of those. And that's why a lot of the sommeliers come from, lots of countries, and are really advocating, wines from other places. And I mean, I think the other thing, we were in Mauritius a couple of years ago at this hotel, staying at this hotel with a crazy wine list, the Constance Belmar Plausch. And, they got Salon back to the 60s and Romani Conti and all this kind of stuff, all good prices. And I was talking to this sommelier, and I said, he said, what do you do? I said, I'm in the wine trade in London and so on and so forth. And he said, £67 mount. And I said, yeah, £67 mount. And he said, every sommelier in the world wants to work for £67. I mean, by this point, we're 6,000 miles away, right? He's like, every sommelier in the world wants to work for £67 mount. And I said, and he said, where do you work? And I said, I work for sort of a lesser known wine company called Berry Brothers and Rudd, kind of the most famous wine merchant in the world. And he just looked at me and he just went, never heard of it. He's like, £67 miles more famous. And at the time, it's like 2 years old, right?
Okay.
And it just made me realize that there is this almost like this aspiration.
Like a myth, yes.
From globally that people are just like, they want to work there. And if you're into wine, and, we in the London trade sometimes take it a bit for granted. It's available for us and we're there, or if you're a member. But people who come around, people who come to London, and it blows their mind.
So to me, it's really, really a happy place, because if you're passionate in wine, this is like the holy grail, I think. Especially sitting there with you, because it's so funny. Before entering your seat, we need to wait like 40 minutes because you need to say hello to everyone in the room or in the building. But but this is really an experience we need to repeat soon.
Yeah, we can go anytime.
Soon.
To me, I always think it's kind of a bit like Cheers. It's like where everybody knows your name. It's like you turn up, and it's like for me, it's like you're coming home, and it's open from 7 a.m. till 1:30 at night or whatever. It's like, if I'm ever around, I'm always going to find someone in there that I know that wants to just open a glass of wine, or that's like, so nice. Sit at a bar. And so great. Yeah.
So we need to get back there soon as soon as it's possible to get back on the track. So
absolutely, and drink some crazy bottles. Yeah.
Yes, please. So Gareth, thanks a lot for your time. Even though in these hot days, I think out there to the people out there, Gareth to me is really an impressive person, and as you can hear, he's so passionate, so experienced, and it was kind of a really, really inside talk of the wine business, wine trade, and also just talk of a wine lover. And so thank you very much. Happy to have you here on board, and hope to see you soon. Please stay safe. Gareth, one last word.
And I'll speak. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Great. It's great to chat with you, and as I say, look forward to opening more bottles with you. And you know, there's always a place in London for anyone who's sort of coming around and wants to share some bottles. Like, you know, we have a great community in London, and I think, you know, just sort of get in touch, say hi, and like, you know, and we can organize the rest.
Perfect. Super thankful. Perfect.
Cool.
Gareth, thank you very much. Cheers.
Speak to you soon.